pauses for the time being. So thank you for
Recording
those of you.
is on.
Oh, we're recording. Great. So thank you to those of you that are going to stick with me and watch your emails for a message about perhaps a live class in my backyard poolside. And I'll also live stream it to you as well. But I've got a nice space where I could social distance with yoga mats. So be watching for that in date and time. So today we are focusing on hip openers. And our hips, of course, are joints that move in a circular motion. They can flex, extend, rotate, and circumduct. So to open the hips, we want to focus on all directions of opening the hips, with the exception of the position we're always in, which is seated. So we typically don't open the hips by stretching a lot through the back side of the hip, but we'll stretch through the outside, the inside, through some rotation as well. So if you have a block, that's a great tool, a strap as well. And let's just come into a nice comfortable seated position, either on the floor, or if you'd like to be in a chair, that is nice as well. So just an easy cross-leg pose if that feels good for you. I'm sitting up on a blanket, which elevates those hips just a little bit so I can keep a nice neutral spine. Let's close our eyes and just begin to focus on the breath. And how precious the breath is. The breath is yoga. It is our life force. And our breath enhances our practice so much if we're mindful of each and every inhalation and exhalation. So as you begin to breathe, just notice your hips and thinking about for you where you feel the tightest today. We'll be opening up the fronts of the hips, the hip flexors, the deep rotators of the hips. So we're stretching the piriformis muscles, alleviating tension on the sciatic nerve. So just notice where you are today and what might need the most attention for you. And as you continue to breathe and bring your awareness to a good neutral posture, long spine, just softly blink your eyes open and place the bottoms of your feet together to touch in front of you in Baddha Konasana. So we have some space to play with here in our Baddha Konasana. We can have the feet really close into the groin, or we can take the feet a little further away so the knees aren't quite bent as much. And for just a moment, take a nice inhalation. And as you exhale, fold your belly through that space just very gently. And notice the release that you feel in your lower back and in the hips. Maybe a little bit in the thighs as well, upper portion of your hamstrings. And today with our poses, we will use a sinking breath. So with the sinking breath, we take an inhale that's deep, maybe a count of 3, 2, 1, and then exhale twice as long as that in-breath. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Take 2 more sinking breaths. Inhaling 3, 2, 1. Exhaling 6. Sinking a little deeper into your stretch. 3, 2, 1. Breathe in 3. Breathe out 6. And find your edge with that range of motion. And then align your spine back up to neutral. Very nice. So let's take the right leg and extend it straight out in front of you. So we'll just focus on opening up this left hip. Relax the leg here. If you need to support it underneath with a block, sometimes that's a nice idea. You can have something to press into. We'll breathe in. And as you breathe out, fold over that front leg. A strap is a nice tool to use here if you'd like to place it under the bottom of the foot. The knee can bend a little bit if you're feeling tight in the back of the leg. So notice the different sensations we're feeling here in this stretch. Left hip, right hamstring. And I won't cue the sinking breath anymore. You just pull that into your practice throughout the morning. Especially if you feel your mind wandering in the stretches, just come back to that breath. Maybe inhaling 4, exhaling 8, whatever works good for you this morning. And then pull the spine back up to neutral. You're going to sink into this stretch one more time, but your option is to keep this leg as it is, or we can take this foot and cross it over, and our goal is to stack both knees here. So I have my left foot turned underneath, a little bit of a flex in the ankle. This will open up the hip a little bit differently on that left side. Take a breath in, reach, and exhale, lengthen. Much different stretch here. So just notice those sensations, use your sinking breath, elongate your spine as you breathe. And our stretches today, we hold them a little bit longer so they're not forceful. We're patient in each and every one of these stretches. Maybe your eyes close again to bring the senses inward to what you're feeling in your body rather than what you're seeing in the space of your room. And we'll rise up. And switching sides, extend the left leg straight forward and pull the sole of your right foot to the inner thigh. This is our seated tree pose, also known as Janushirasana. We'll inhale, reach up. Exhale, folding right over that front leg. And just become aware of your right hip, the inner thigh, outer thigh, maybe the low back as well, as we're stretching that posterior fascial line. With our stretches today, we're not to feel any pain or strain. So knowing your body, maybe there's a little slight bit of discomfort just of the stretch, but no pain. Just so that you feel you're reaching deeply into the muscles and the fascia. Let's roll ourselves back up to neutral. And the second time you can repeat the same stretch or fold the leg across. So this stretch is maybe not always suitable for everyone. So if you're feeling any pain, especially in this knee, take that first stretch. We'll inhale to reach. Exhale to sink with that sinking breath. And just try to relax here and breathe. Relaxing the muscles of your jaw and neck and shoulders, upper back. There's no gripping or tightening. Total relaxation and release. One more breath here. Exhaling twice as long as that inhalation. And rising back up. The right leg stays in front of you. The left leg swings off to the side for a Z-sit position. Now, if this hip doesn't all the way connect with your mat, you can slip your blanket underneath or a block so you have something to press against. And walk the hands out in front of you to open up that front hip while we're rotating the thigh bone. This is our modified pigeon. We'll have an opportunity to come into a deeper pigeon stretch later in our practice, but just for now, let's take this modification. So your upper body is descending right in front of your shin. We'll hold that one more breath. And then just walk your hands over towards your right knee and let your upper body descend over the knee itself. And see what kind of a different stretch you feel there in the outer portion of your right hip. So your forehead might come down to the floor, or maybe you can stack your fists or bring your block underneath your forehead. So give you a better opportunity to let everything go and relax. If you're not using the muscles of your upper back to hold your head up in place. Now you can stay here for a couple more breaths, or if you'd like to try to walk yourself even further over to the right, we're turning, the legs are staying where they're at, but turning your chest and set it down. Noticing the change in the stretch. And your belly's a little bit compromised here to breathe, so focus on pulling the breath into the side and the back rib cage. And then press into the palms of your hands. You're still over that leg off to the right, but press yourself up and lengthen your spine into just a gentle back bend here. It's okay if you don't get the arms all the way straight. Your back bend might be here. Press your shoulders down away from your ears, lengthening the spine. And then walk yourself back around to the center. Take hold of this ankle with the left hand and pull the knee back to open up through the front of this left hip. Now, if you'd like a little deeper stretch here, you might like to tip yourself back, putting your hands behind you, or even coming down maybe to your elbows behind. This is a pretty good stretch for me, so I prefer staying up a little bit. And this is the lengthening you're feeling in that front hip flexor on the left side. Shoulders are back. So each one of these stretches we're taking today will have the opportunity to find a deeper place during our practice, but know you can always come back to the base pose or the base stretch a second time if that feels better for you. And let's press it back up. And we'll reverse the leg position, bringing the back leg around to the front, and your shin is parallel to the front edge of your mat. Your left shin parallel to the side, or right shin parallel to the side. And then just take your chest right over that shin and fold down into your pigeon stretch. So the first thing, you might notice a big difference between your right and left sides. And that is so normal with our bodies. Because of activities of daily living, we have the tendency to be tighter on one side than another, or stronger on one side. And maybe we never ever achieve perfect balance in our body. It's a journey. But we just keep moving toward that balance each and every day. Now begin to move your hands to the left side. So now your chest will fold directly over the bent knee. Using a block or stacked fist for your forehead, or a blanket or a pillow. And breathe into the back rib cage, the side ribs. And just check to make sure you're not contracting your gluteal muscles or your legs. Everything is soft and at rest. So this one you may like to stay as you are for a while longer. Or if you feel you can start to move your upper body even more to the left side, slightly lift up, walk your hands around, turn your chest, and try folding over one more time. So if I polled each and every one of you to ask what you're feeling in your body, all the answers would be different because our bodies are so different. So if any of these stretches don't feel right for you, or you'd like to go somewhere else to get a deeper stretch, just feel free to do that today in your practice. Now press into the palms of the hands, keeping the chest either over the knee or toward the side of your mat, and lengthen up into an easy back bend. This is a twist as well, so be real gentle in your spine. Try not to shrug or slump here, but we're lengthening up and out of the shoulders. And then bringing the body back to the center with the right hand, reach for that right ankle and slide this knee back a little further to open up the hip. If you're feeling a good stretch, you can stay there. You can keep the ankle, or maybe walk your hands behind you, leaning back. I know there's some of you that take my class that can lay all the way onto your back in this stretch. So go where you feel comfortable. No pain, no tension or strain, no shaking of the muscle, just complete relaxation. Come back to that sinking breath at any time to help you find a little bit more depth and to also relax the mind as well. And then press yourself back up. We'll come to our hands and knees, just pivoting yourself around. And as you come to the knees, widen the knees to a wide knee child's pose. So I'm opening the knees nice and wide. My big toes are touching. And I set the hips back towards the heels and drop the belly, the chin, the chest, the forehead. And also today we'll be on our knees a fair amount. So if you need to fold your mat a little bit or have a blanket or a towel or something you can place under your knees, That's a nice prop to use for comfort. Now we'll walk the hands back in. Walk the knees back in. And then take your the leg that's furthest away from the camera, that's to the back of your mat, and step it forward. So for me, it's my right, but for you, it might be your left facing the camera. I want you to take a nice big step with this leg forward and then sink down through this hip and the back leg, back hip flexor. That back knee, you might need padding for comfort. We'll reach this arm up of the back leg side and stretch here to open up the hip flexor. And maybe we can find a little bit more depth by adding a side bend towards the back edge of your mat. Really lengthen through the front of that hip. So we do a lot of sitting during the day, and so the hip flexor right here, especially that right side, because of driving a car, gets really tight. So open it up, keep sinking your body weight down, enjoy that stretch. And then as you lower this hand down, place both hands to the inside of the leg that's in front. You might have to heel toe that front foot out a little wider. We'll sink down into that hip flexor, again on the right side. Maybe you can come down to your elbows or elbows on a block, wherever you feel comfortable here. So we are getting two different hip flexor stretches. So on this back leg behind you, again, we're opening up the front of the hip. But you might notice on the other leg a deep stretch in the back of the hip. And we are going to modify that back leg a little bit. I'm going to come to a diagonal for you so you can see my foot a bit here. So take this front leg, pivot on your heel and turn your foot out, and maybe even come to the outside edge of your foot. So the bottom of my foot is starting to turn to face forward. This causes my knee to go away from me. And I can even give it a little bit of a push with this opposite hand to open up the inside of the hip on that leg. You can make this into a bit of a rotation as well. And as I'm twisting towards the back of my mat, that's deepening the stretch into the hip flexor of my back trailing leg. One more breath here. And we come out of the twist. Let this knee come back to center, placing the foot flat, and then come back to your child's pose. Widen your knees out. Sink the hips back towards the heels. Rest. And then coming back up, we'll repeat to the other side. I'm going to pivot actually on my mat so you can see that stretch a little bit more. You can as well, or just step the other foot forward. So first stretch, sinking down into the hip flexor. So sometimes I see this one in class and it's looking like this, where the hip is directly over the knee. And if that's the case, we're not getting that hip to open up. So we want to take the hips and sink them down. And then we'll lift the arm. And maybe a side bend over to even open this up more. You decide where to go here. And then just come back to that sinking breath. Feel a connection in your core. A gentle connection with your bandhas. drawing the pelvic floor up the Mula Bandha. And then we'll bring this arm down. Both hands will go to the inside of that front foot. Walk it out a little if you need. And we're still sinking this hip down. I'm definitely feeling tighter. This is my right side, and I'm feeling tighter through. And then with the front foot, we'll pivot the foot outward, turning on the heel, and I'm rotating onto the outside edge of the foot to turn the bottom of the foot to face forward. This turns that knee out. I can give it a little press and maybe a rotation and twist. I kind of like this one using a block. So demonstration of that would be to put the block right underneath your forearm and then rotate. That releases your hand, your wrist from having a lot of pressure on it. Maybe 2 more sinking breaths. And as you press back up with the hands, we'll pivot that foot back to face the floor, bringing the knee to alignment. Now you can press back to child's pose again, or we can take frog pose. So with frog, we have the knees wide. And if it feels comfortable for you, turn your feet out on each side and walk your knees as wide as you feel comfortable here. Now for me, this is pretty tight, so I'm just going to stay upright here in this position. But you can come down to your elbows, or you can set your hips a little bit closer back towards your heels. Or if your knees feel uncomfortable, turn your feet to face straight down towards the mat rather than turned out. So find a place that feels suitable for you. And as you hold this, you might be able to walk your knees a little wider and a little wider on each side. And then just come back into that sinking breath. And again, if this is not comfortable, just press back to a wide knee child's pose. We'll hold here about 30 seconds more, maybe sinking down a little deeper. And then just preparing to come out of the pose, feel what you're feeling in your body and choose a way that's comfortable for you to come out. So it might not be the same for all of us to exit that pose. And then come back to your wide knee child's pose just for a couple breaths. And then we'll rise up to a stand. You can take your time maybe to come through a forward bend, walking your feet. We'll rise all the way up to extended mountain pose stretch. Press the palms, hands at heart center. So we're going to take our pigeon pose and balance with it today. So you might have a block close for you to use, or maybe a chair to place your hands on, or even a wall to help you with balance today. So let's stand on our left foot, pick up the right knee, and I have my foot flexed. And we'll rotate the knee out and bring the ankle above the knee onto the left quadricep. So this externally rotates that right thigh, and start to bend your standing leg, draping your upper body over the legs. So here's where your block comes in really handy to help us with our balance, to be able to sink down a little deeper into this pose. Some of you might have an arm balance that you'd like to work on here. So with our arm balance, we can bring the hands all the way down to the floor and begin to tip the body weight forward into the hands, maybe picking that back foot up off the floor. If you lose your balance, try not to rush to come back into the pose. Take your time, bring yourself upright, take a couple of breaths, and come back in when it feels the time is right. Let's take 2 more sinking breaths. Those slow exhalations. Maybe coming deeper as we exhale. And then you decide how to come out of the pose. If you'd like to uncross your legs first before you stand up, that's great. Or rise up on one foot and then uncross once you're up. Take a breath in, reach, and press the palms. Let's switch sides. So standing now on that left foot, picking up the right knee, rotate it out. No, we did that one, didn't we? My body said, wait a minute. All right. So if you're feeling a lot of stretch upright, you don't have to come forward. This can be done seated in a chair really nicely. So if you're sitting in a chair, just cross your ankle over the opposite thigh and just start to lean your body forward. And then come down to that place where you know you can stay for a little bit and breathe. And use your props. That's what they're there for. There's a lot going on in this standing pigeon between the balance and the breath and the stretch and the awareness, the drishti, the focal point. The ankle that's crossed over should have some flexion in it to help us protect our knee joint, the integrity of that joint. Let's take 2 more sinking breaths in this balanced pose. And then you choose the way to exit the pose, either uncrossing the leg first to stand or rising up on that one leg. And then uncross, take a breath, stretch up. And press palms at the heart. So we'll be coming into full pigeon. If you prefer to do figure 4 stretch, now's the time for you to come down onto your back. So we're going to stretch the right leg first in our pigeon. So I'm bringing myself to face this direction. And we'll bring the hands forward, walk the feet back into just a brief downward facing dog. And then I'll bring that right knee forward towards the right wrist, the right ankle towards the left wrist, and sink back into my pigeon. So the different positions of pigeon is going to give us different stretches in our hips, different sensations. If I am upright in my pigeon, my focus here is in this hip. If I'm down over the leg, my focus comes into the other leg hip. So I want you to take the position that feels best for you. We can also reach back to this ankle and pull the heel in towards the glute to get even more stretch for that back leg, hip flexor, and quad. So we are going to hold this stretch for 2 more minutes from this place, deciding where you want to take it, focusing on the sinking breath. So this pose sometimes is uncomfortable for knees. So your option with this, if you choose to take figure 4 stretch, is to lay onto the back. That same leg that's in front crosses over the thigh, and we pull both knees up to the chest. You can reach through, grabbing the back of the leg and pulling it in. So you have a lot of control over this stretch when you're doing figure 4. So it's a wonderful option here. And let's close your eyes. And for our last minute holding this pigeon, try to find a deeper place. And again, just checking to make sure there's no tension, no stress in the muscles, no pain in the joints. And if your body's saying now's the time to leave the pose, just listen and observe and let it go anytime you need to. We're here just a couple more breaths, but start to think about how you are going to exit the pose. So if you're here where I am now in figure 4, you can just set the feet down, uncross the legs, and maybe windshield wiper the knees back and forth. If you're in that traditional pigeon pose, you can press yourself back to a downward dog and pedal out the feet or move the hips around. Or maybe take a child's pose and just observe the difference that you feel from one side to the other. And then we'll prepare to switch sides when you're ready. So if you're in your down dog, step your left foot forward. If you're here in figure 4, you can cross the other leg over the thigh and pull the knees up to the chest. So our entire hold is 3 minutes start to finish. Ooh, there goes the block. And there goes my little sign. So with the upright position, we want to be really careful of this front leg that we're not feeling any pain in the knee. This foot flexed will help us to tighten the muscles in the shin to keep the knee protected. You can try a few of the different positions here to see what this side of your body is especially needing today. And oftentimes we have a favorite where we know it just feels really good, we want to go there. But we have to think about if that's really what our body's needing today, is what we always do, or do we need to go somewhere where we feel a little bit uncomfortable? And I'm not speaking in a pain-wise, but just a place where it's maybe a little bit unfamiliar. It's something your body might need a little bit more. about 1 minute remaining, see if you can find a deeper place. Or if the body's saying now's the time to come out and rest, you can remove yourself from that pose. Make sure you're breathing, not holding your breath during these poses. And just a couple more sinking breaths, lengthening the spine, folding a little deeper. That slow exhalation helps us to relax, releases anxiety from our physical body and our mental well-being. And then deciding how you'd like to come out of your pose. If you're laying on your back, you can uncross and do a few little windshield wipers. If you're here in this traditional pigeon, you can pull the leg around or spend a couple of breaths in down dog. And then we're going to come down onto our back. And if you have a block or maybe a rolled up towel or pillow, have that close. We're going to use that as an option to stretch the hip flexors even more today. So coming down onto your back, we'll separate our feet just as wide as our mat is, and your knees as wide as your mat as well. And then drop both legs over to one side. You choose which way you'd like to go. And when those knees drop over, you'll notice that your hip lifts up off the floor. And this opens up your hip flexor. It also gives our body a gentle twist. So your shoulder blades should be staying flat onto the mat. And on this hip side that's lifted, I want you to squeeze through your gluteal muscle, tighten it just a little bit, and try to lift your hip up a little bit higher, opening up that hip flexor. Now you can also take the other leg and place your foot right on top of the outside of your knee or shin and use it to weight this down to feel a little bit more intention here. So if you don't have a block today when we go to the second stretch, you can come back and repeat this one because it's this opening of the hip that we're going for getting with the block. So you can always come back to this one. And let's do the other side. So uncross the foot, bring both knees up. Your feet and your knees are as wide as your mat are. And we'll drop the knees to the other side, allowing this hip to lift and rise. Shoulder blades stay on the mat. Tighten the glute and try to lift the hip higher, or place the other foot across the top and give it a little bit of weight. Now make sure you're not feeling, again, any tension or pain in your knees with this. Should be comfortable. Not a deep sensation. We're breathing into the entire rib cage to enhance the slight twist we have here. Now remember, you can revisit this pose on each side if you don't have a block to come with you in the next pose. So if you have the ankle crossed, uncross it, bring your knees both back up. And then your block is going to go right underneath the hips and the sacrum. So I have mine at its lowest position here, but you can have it at medium. The highest might be a little bit too high. It just depends on the block that you have. And we'll just take one of our legs and drop it down to straight. This opens up the hip flexor. The other knee, pull into your chest, holding it in tightly. If you prefer on the leg you're holding in to get a little hamstring release, we can extend that leg up or use a strap underneath the bottom of that foot. But the hip that we're opening here is the lower leg side. So if your foot is not touching the floor and you're on the block and your leg's hanging in space, that gives you a pretty good idea that you have a fairly tight hip flexor on that side. So maybe you'll want to take your block out or come down a little bit. If you're not feeling a lot of stretch here, you can play with that block and maybe flip it up a little higher to a medium place and find a deeper stretch. One more sinking breath. Exhaling twice as long as that inhalation. And then we can bring both feet right down to the floor with bent knees for a little supported bridge. And you can keep your hips on the block, or you can lift them up off for a second and tighten the glutes. And then lower back down. Take the other leg out long. See how that stretch feels on that side. And pulling the knee into your chest or extending the leg up into that hamstring stretch. We're here for a couple of minutes, so you choose where you'd like to go. And even if you don't have a block, you can do this stretch with a little bit different emphasis. Wind relieving pose, or just that hamstring stretch with your leg up. And just notice the difference you feel on this side. Soften the muscles, let everything go. And also notice your spine. If you're feeling any pain in the lower back here, that might be another indication to remove the block, to bring the hips down to the mat. The leg that's extended out long onto the floor, make sure it feels heavy. You're not contracting the muscle if it's hanging in space. You want it to be connected with the floor if possible. Let's take one more sinking breath. Exhaling slowly and completely. And then bringing both feet again back down to your mat with knees bent. You can stay here on the block for a supported bridge, or press into the feet and lift the hips up off the block for just a couple of breaths tightening the glutes, opening up the heart. Then your hips come down to find the block again. And you might stay here with knees bent, or maybe explore if you can send both of your legs out into this supported bridge with straight legs. So contraindications for this, if you're feeling any pain in your lower back, you want to come out, bring the block either down more or out completely, or bend your knees and set your feet down. If your legs are hanging in space and aren't touching the floor, another contraindication to change the position. Allow your toes to slightly roll out. If your knees are bent with feet flat, you can allow your knees to fall towards each other to touch in the middle. And this will give you a different stretch here in the outside of the hips. So both are good. And just one more sinking breath here in our supported bridge. If your legs are extended out long, bring them back to bend the knees. Place the feet down, lift the hips up off the block. Slide it out from underneath the hips. And then one vertebra at a time, slowly roll down, tucking the pelvis, flattening the lumbar spine to the mat. And then draw your knees up into your chest for a counter stretch. We'll do some egg beater circles. So with your hands on your knees, push them forward, separate them, and come around back together. Push forward, separate, and together. Two more. Then reversing the egg beater, separate the knees, push them away from you, draw them together, and pull them back toward you. And just noticing the flexibility now of your hips after our practice today. And then bring your knees in, separate them, and either hug them wide into your chest, or we can take happy baby, and I'm placing my elbow to the inside of my knee, but my hand grabs the outside of my foot, and place your feet right up towards the ceiling. Pull your knees down to the outside of your armpits and flatten your lower back. If you'd like, you can rock this a little bit side to side, massage the lower back. And then release that, bringing the soles of the feet together down onto your mat, opening up the knees. Supta Baddha Konasana, reclined bound angle pose. Find a nice long spine and feel a heaviness in the inner thighs. Just let those legs relax. Arms in any comfortable position, either by your side or maybe one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart. Come back to that sinking breath. invite you to remain in this hip opener for your meditation, final Shavasana. Or if the legs are feeling a little bit achy here, just slide them out, straightening them, or find any other comfortable position. And with each breath in, draw peace and comfort and healing into every cell of your body. With each exhalation, let go of anything that no longer serves you today. Let go of hurt, of anger, of pain. Now, as you're home in the comfort of your space, feel free to stay here if you'd like. There's no need to exit from the class right away. Or begin to flutter your fingers and toes as we prepare to rise back up. Maybe stretching the arms above the head. And you choose how to come up. You can roll over to a side and press yourself up, or you can use knees into the chest and rock yourself up to seated. Once you rise, one more time, just bringing your awareness to your hips. Maybe they're feeling a little warm and tingly, stretchy. That sensation of the self-care that you've provided for yourself today. We'll take a breath in, inhale. Press the palms, draw thumbs into our Anjali Mudra. A symbol and sign of gratitude and honor. And this gratitude embraces each and every one of us from the space of our own homes today. It links us, it unites us into that amazing community that we are. And the light and love and peace that resides within me honors the light, love, and peace in each of you. Namaste. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to teach you today. I hope everything feels wonderful. See some cameras coming on. I'll take the recording off and say hello. There's Julie. How's everybody doing? Pretty good?